As we've told you earlier, former President Jacob Zuma is set to appear at the state capture inquiry tomorrow. He's accused of having presided over the state capture project or having enabled it. The issue of state capture has raised concerns about the effectiveness of legal processes and institutions in South Africa. Lawyer and founder of Country Duty, Tumi Sole, joins me in studio now. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Former President Jacob Zuma appearing at that commission tomorrow. What are we expecting from that?
Good evening, and good evening to all your viewers. I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion, and more importantly, in my view, and this is my prediction, there's most likely going to be some legalese that needs to be dealt with, such as the evidence that's going to be led, who's going to be asking questions, are those questions specific or related to every witness's testimony. I think for me the real issue has been whether the witnesses place him as the main state capturer, as you would. I think there's definitely going to be surprises, and I don't think the first day will go on. I anticipate a postponement. I may be wrong, but definitely he will be taking the stand during this week, and it's going to be fireworks.
The issue of state capture has raised concerns about the effectiveness of legal processes and institutions in South Africa. How would you characterize the state of the law and legal institutions, and perhaps how citizens deal with the law in South Africa?
All right. I think, the state capture inquiry, like the PIC inquiry as well, has brought in very interesting aspects. In fact, it goes back, in my view, to citizens being interested in what's happening in the country. So having it on the likes of SABC, broadcasting it, be it online or otherwise, has made citizens more aware. I think we do have robust institutions, despite what other people think or say about them. I think there's definitely an interest, because if you look at it, there are highly politically connected people who are either implicated directly or indirectly. So there's definitely an interest from a citizenry perspective.
So we can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but what type of a witness do you think former President Jacob Zuma is going to be?
I think he's going to be, firstly, an interesting witness, given the video that you just showed now. It's very rare in my view, and that's how he is, and I've perceived him unpredictable at first. We are going to hear, as I'm predicting, things that we ought not to either, or let alone thought about. So definitely one that's going to be difficult at times in terms of questions. So there'll definitely be objections, or Mr. Zuma asked you this, please focus on the question, and he wants to be elaborative. But that's the nature of legal proceedings, and we must be patient, and that's the whole point with these type of inquiries.
Let's talk about our legal institutions. There was a report this week that the National Prosecuting Authority is looking at perhaps being funded by private people who now want to make donations because they see that the institution is hobbled and they feel as though they want to help. What do you think of that?
I've actually tweeted this, and I said that's, for me, and speaking for Tumi, it's a red flag for various reasons. But the most major reason why it's a red flag, it's because whoever pays the piper really, would influence certain decisions. And we must be very careful in having private interest influencing, or rather donating, to state institutions. For me, what could happen, instead of having private donors, why can't we capacitate the NPA, for example? Why can't we train people and get them to a certain level? If the issue is about budget, the Treasury and Minister Mboweni must allocate more funds and resources to that, but not have private interest influencing these type of decisions.
Okay, another institution that's in the media quite a lot, especially this week, is the Public Protector's Office.
Yes.
There's an ongoing spat with Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan. What do you make of that, and what are the issues at play there?
I think, as you correctly said, various issues at play. And I think we need to be very cautious as to not being positional. What we've seen in the past couple of days is people adopting, for and against type of attitude or argument. Firstly, the Public Protector is an institution recognized by our Constitution, which is the supreme law of the country. And it actually says in the Public Protector Act that the Public Protector is only subject to the Constitution. So he could be scrutinized in terms of Public Protectors Act, but ultimately it's the Constitution that confers powers onto the Public Protector, including the Public Protector Act. Now, the spat, as you said, between the public protector and Minister Kodan, it's a very interesting one. It's opened so many avenues from the media, from political commentators. But in my view, if I were to opine on that, I think this is great for two reasons. Firstly, it is testing the efficacy of that institution, like the public protector. And also, will the court, as much as Mr. Kodan has reviewed, agree with Mr. Kodan or the public protector? Instead of adopting positions, I think we really need to wait this one out and see how it goes on.
Something with a lot of issues there is country duty. Talk to us about that, what you do there and how you mobilize social media to deal with various challenges that some South Africans face.
All right. So how I would like to see and characterize country duty, it's really a social movement and a hashtag for South Africans by South Africans. What it normally does and what we look into is various issues, be it politics at times, activism. But what we've recently done, there were floods in Durban, and I think SABC had ran that, and various families were impacted and affected. We mobilized South Africans to donate, and we were there this past weekend in Umlazi, which was mainly hit, and literally through a tweet we asked people to pledge. They put in various donations, some funds we were able to purchase, and we accounted to South Africans. So in essence, to get the momentum going, to make sure that either when someone is missing, there's a tweet that comes out, it's really something that is being owned by the South Africans, and we just direct and convey the conversations.
I remember it started and there was conversations about who started and whatever. Now you're saying that it's a movement for all South Africans.
Yes.
How then are you held accountable, especially when you're talking about people putting money into accounts,
yes,
and going to Durban, all of that?
What we do, firstly, and from various tweets, if you could grab it, when there's a disaster, for example, in Alexandra, we point out, we do a needs analysis. So together with the team and various stakeholders such as government or EMPD, whoever, we then identify that there are X amount of babies that are required, and we would tweet that in our view, we think X amount of diapers would be needed. And when we even are there, we are able to put up videos. We are able to say, this is how much of what we've received, and we've done that previously. This is what we are spending it on, and it's not our money. And I think the accountability and the integrity associated with this type of process is very key to what we do. In our view, it's not necessary for us to do this, but we think as the team, this is the right thing to do. We want to rally South Africans not only to be, responsive to disasters, but to be in a position where if law enforcement is lacking, we can make the right noise, work in collaboration with law enforcement.
Tumi Sole, thanks so much for your time and your commentary on various legal issues and speaking about country duty there. A reminder that if you're planning on going to the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture tomorrow, only the first 200 people will be accommodated. Registration starts at 7:30 at the Youth for Christ camp at 4 Empire Road. That's just across from the BP garage. The entrance is in Uber Street. You'll also have to present positive identification like your identity document or your driver's license. People will be registered on a first come, first serve basis. And of course, the SABC will be bringing you that live both on our television screens and on our apps as well as our YouTube channel. It's time for a short break. When we come back, Dr. Sindisiwe van Zyl joins me in studio discussing all things health in South Africa. Do stay with us.